There are moments in history when the world feels less solid than it used to. Not always in ways that can be measured, not always in headlines or breaking news alerts, but in a quieter, more persistent sense, a feeling that the structures we once trusted are shifting beneath our feet. Many people today describe it as a low-grade tension, a subtle hum of unease that doesn't fully disappear, even during calm moments. Systems that once felt dependable now feel strained. Institutions that once projected confidence now seem uncertain. And beneath all of it, there is a shared intuition that something important is being tested. This feeling isn't hysteria, it isn't weakness, and it isn't imagination. Throughout history, entire generations have stood at similar thresholds. Moments when the future felt unclear and the old assumptions no longer held. In those moments, the human instinct is almost always the same. We look outward for certainty. We search for forecasts, predictions, and explanations that promise clarity. We want someone to tell us what is coming and how to stay safe from it. Nearly a century ago, during another period of global anxiety, people asked those same questions of a quiet man from Virginia Beach named Edgar Cayce. They came to him frightened, confused, and overwhelmed by forces they felt powerless to control. They wanted to know what would happen next. They wanted reassurance that the world wasn't falling apart. What Cayce offered them was not prediction. What he offered was guidance. And today, as uncertainty once again presses against the edges of daily life, that guidance matters more than ever. Before we go any further, I want to pause for just a moment. If you're drawn to thoughtful, grounded explorations of Edgar Cayce's teachings, not sensationalism, not fear-based content, but calm, faithful interpretation, I invite you to subscribe to this channel now. These conversations are meant to steady the mind, not alarm it. They're meant to offer orientation, not prediction. Subscribing helps ensure you don't miss future episodes as we continue exploring Cayce's work with care, context, and respect. Now let's continue. To understand why Edgar Cayce's guidance still resonates, it's important to understand who he was and who he was not. Cayce never positioned himself as a prophet in the traditional sense. He resisted that label. He did not claim authority over the future, nor did he present himself as someone delivering unavoidable outcomes. Instead, he described himself as a reader of conditions. People often misunderstand this distinction. A prophet declares what must happen. A reader of conditions explains what tends to happen when certain patterns remain unchanged. Cayce lived through one of the most turbulent eras of modern history. He witnessed the economic collapse of the Great Depression, the psychological shock it delivered to ordinary families, and the political instability that followed. He lived through the rise of global conflict and the slow erosion of public trust in institutions that once seemed unshakable. During those years, people did not come to him asking philosophical questions. They came desperate. They came afraid. They came wanting certainty. And Cayce consistently refused to give it to them in the form they expected. He would not assign dates. He would not promise safety. He would not declare inevitable outcomes. Instead, he spoke about responsibility, balance, and inner alignment. He spoke about how societies create their own conditions, and how individuals respond to those conditions determines what comes next. This refusal to indulge fear is one of the reasons his work has endured. At the heart of Cayce's worldview was a deceptively simple framework. Spirit is the life, mind is the builder. The physical world is the result. This wasn't poetry, it was a working model. According to Cayce, the physical conditions people experience socially, economically, even environmentally, are not primary causes. They are effects. They lag behind thought, belief, and collective mindset. This is where many people misunderstand his work. When instability appears, the instinct is to treat it as the source of fear. Cayce reversed that logic. He suggested that fear and imbalance precede instability, not the other way around. In this view, changing external conditions without addressing internal causes is ineffective. You can rearrange systems, replace leaders, or rebuild structures, But if the underlying consciousness remains unchanged, instability returns in a new form. This framework places responsibility back where it belongs, not on events, but on awareness. Cayce repeatedly emphasized that history does not move in a straight line toward constant improvement. It moves in cycles. Civilizations rise, they grow confident, they overextend, they lose balance. This is not failure, it is rhythm. Cayce viewed cycles as necessary for growth. Without correction, excess becomes destructive. Without challenge, consciousness stagnates. One of the reasons modern instability feels so unsettling is because contemporary culture is deeply invested in the idea of permanent progress. When progress slows or reverses, it feels like betrayal rather than correction. Cayce did not share this assumption. He believed that periods of contraction are invitations to re-evaluate values. They force societies to confront what they have prioritized and what they have neglected. From this perspective, upheaval is not the end of a story, it is the turning of a page. To understand the relevance of Cayce's guidance, it helps to look at the kinds of questions people asked him during the Great Depression. Families were losing homes. Jobs disappeared overnight. Savings evaporated. The psychological shock was immense. People wanted to know, when will this end? Who is to blame? How do I protect myself? Cayce did not dismiss these fears, but he did not feed them either. He spoke about cooperation rather than competition. He emphasized community over isolation. He encouraged people to serve where they could, even when resources were scarce. He warned that panic thinking leads to short-sighted decisions. He reminded people that fear narrows perception, making it difficult to recognize opportunity or guidance. Most importantly, he emphasized that hardship reveals character. Moments of instability do not create virtue or vice. They expose what already exists. One of Cayce's most misunderstood teachings is his description of the Earth as a living system. This was never meant as a threat. Cayce used the metaphor of a living body to explain balance. Just as the human body responds to stress with symptoms, larger systems respond to imbalance with feedback. Symptoms are not attacks, they are signals. In this framework, environmental instability is not nature turning against humanity. It is feedback from a system under strain. Cayce believed that human thought and behavior matter, not in a mystical sense, but in a practical one. Exploitation, disregard, and imbalance eventually produce consequences. Respect, cooperation, and stewardship produce resilience. This reframing removes fear and restores responsibility. Cayce spoke carefully about collective responsibility. He did not describe nations as moral entities deserving punishment. He described societies as expressions of shared values and priorities. When imbalance appears, the question is not who is guilty. The question is, what needs to change? Blame freezes consciousness. Responsibility mobilizes it. Cayce emphasized that no society is fixed in its trajectory. Renewal is always possible when awareness shifts. This teaching is especially relevant in polarized times. It calls individuals out of blame and into participation. Cayce consistently warned against 4 responses during times of instability. First, panic. Fear distorts perception and invites poor decision-making. Second, obsession with outcomes. Fixating on what might happen drains energy from what can be done now. Third, withdrawal from service. Isolation weakens resilience, connection strengthens it. Fourth, illusion of external control. No system or structure can substitute for inner clarity. These warnings are timeless. In place of fear, Cayce urged alignment. Alignment with conscience. Alignment with service. Alignment with ethical consistency. He believed that individuals who cultivate inner stability become stabilizing forces within their communities. Stillness, he taught, is not passivity. It is clarity. From clarity comes discernment. From discernment comes wise action. One of Cayce's most empowering teachings was his insistence on free will. He rejected the idea of fixed destiny. Outcomes, he believed, shift as consciousness shifts. This does not mean individuals control everything. It means responses matter. Small choices accumulate, values compound. Direction emerges from consistency. The future is not imposed. It is negotiated, moment by moment, through awareness. Why uncertainty is the test. Cayce believed uncertainty itself is the test. Not collapse, not chaos. Uncertainty. When certainty disappears, people reveal what they rely on. Some turn to fear. Others turn to responsibility. This is the moment consciousness matures. Edgar Cayce did not teach people how to escape uncertain times. He taught them how to meet them. With awareness instead of fear. With responsibility instead of blame. With service instead of withdrawal. The question was never what will happen. The question was always who we choose to be when certainty is no longer guaranteed. The question was always who we choose. If this perspective helped steady your thinking, if it brought a sense of clarity rather than fear, I invite you to subscribe and continue these explorations with us. This channel is a place for thoughtful reflection, for grounded insight, and for honoring Edgar Cayce's work with care, context, and respect. In our next episode, we'll look at Edgar Cayce's views on humanity's ancient past, not as prophecy, but as context. Because for Cayce, understanding where we've been was essential to navigating where we are now. Until then, stay grounded, stay thoughtful, and stay aligned.